everybody to this side event on climate resilience needs a water smart society. My name is Dirk Krol. I'm the Executive Director of Water Europe, who has been organizing this session, which you see there, wide diversity of co-organizers. And I also want to particularly thank the European Union for hosting us. I'm very glad also that we have been able to compose, I think, a very interesting program. Particularly, I would like to welcome Dr. Daniel Westland, who is the State Secretary to the Minister for Climate and the Environment from Sweden. Welcome very much. Then also next to me we have Professor Dr. Chrissy Laspidou from the University of Thessaly, who will give us a keynote address. And of course, we have here Per Larsson, who will be moderating our panel and who will be introducing our panelists. As you may have seen, the title of our event, as I said, is Climate Resilience Needs a Water Smart Society. Water Smart Society is a concept that Water Europe has launched about 7 years ago in our vision, which is called The Value of Water Towards a Future-Proof Water Smart Society. And actually, this week, we're just launching the second edition of this Water Vision, where we have briefly updated the definition of a water smart society, which I would like to share with you at this occasion. So for us, a water smart society is a society in which the value of water is recognized and realized to ensure water security, sustainability, and resilience. It's also a society in which all available water sources are managed so that water scarcity and pollution are avoided. Water and resource loops are largely closed to foster a circular economy and optimal resource efficiency. The water system is really resilient against the impacts of climate change and demographic change, and it's a society in which all relevant stakeholders are engaged in guaranteeing a sustainable water governance. Yeah? Now, at the core of our model is the value of water, with 3 key objectives. That is to achieve water security, water sustainability, and water resilience. And in order to achieve that, we have identified 5 key innovation areas which are really necessary to make the transition from the situation we're currently in to that a water smart society, which is all about circular water, multiple waters, digital water, inclusive water, and resilient water. So that's what we're talking about. That is for us a water smart society. And with a brief introduction, I would like to give the floor to Dr. Daniel Westland to share with us his perspective.
Thank you. Ladies, gentlemen, colleagues, and water friends, it's a great honor for me to take part in this side event on climate resilience and the need for water smart societies. I don't think it escaped anyone that water plays a critical role in adaptation to climate change. Both in the short and long term, climate change affects our water. Of course, mitigation of climate change is on the top of everybody's mind, and also very important for the future of mankind and also for ecosystems. Now, at the same time, it's crucial to work on climate change adaptation, not the least because of water and the water environment. Rapid climate change is sadly not the only challenge we're facing. Simultaneously, a large share of the world's population still lacks access to safe drinking water and sanitation facilities. These 2 major challenges need to be tackled together to create resilient and prosperous societies everywhere, all over the planet. As you may know, Sweden holds the presidency of the European Union this spring. We're now halfway through the presidency, and of course this honorable yet challenging task is a main priority for our government. European unity and cooperation within the European Union are more important than ever in these times of multiple ongoing crises with a brutal war at our doorstep. The green transition is one of the overarching priorities of the Swedish presidency. We're committed to accelerate the implementation of the Green Deal to ensure that the EU will deliver on its ambitious climate goals while boosting growth and competitiveness in the process. An important file handled during our presidency is the proposal for a review of the Directive of Urban Wastewater Treatment. This directive sets out new EU rules for the management of wastewater to better protect the health of European citizens as well as the environment. The proposal is a key element to reach the European Green Deal's zero pollution ambition of an environment free of harmful pollution by 2050. There are two other files in this package that together will give us a pollution-free environment within 3 decades. Specifically, the revision of the wastewater directive aims to make the best possible use of wastewater as a resource. The quality of sludge needs to improve to allow for increased reuse, contributing to a more circular economy. Also, the possibility of producing biogas from wastewater should be utilized. The proposed directive even sets ambitious goals for this, which are now under discussion. Several improvements will support health and environmental protection. These include obligations to recover nutrients from wastewater, new standards for micropollutants, and to increase access to sanitation. In fact, part of the reason why we do revise the directive is that we have new challenges arising with wastewater, including problems arising from medicines and from microplastics that were not there in this, but they were not as observed 30 years ago when we wrote the directive. Back to the manuscript. Policy and regulations are cornerstones for a more resilient future. I now look forward to learning from your solutions and innovations during the side event. Examples of how the industry can be a driver for sustainable development is another key element in the transition to a circular economy. Actually, I would say it's the key element. Without industry going forward in this and taking the lead, wastewater and water issues in general cannot be solved, and the same goes for the climate crisis and for the biodiversity crisis. We have to do this by industry leading the development. Which takes me to the next point. The change driven by innovative leaders, communities, and business leaders strengthens my belief that a more resilient future is possible. Now let's join forces in building resilience faster. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Westland, and I'm quite sure that we will all join you in building a more resilient WaterSmart society.
Excellent. My job's done.
We'll help you. Good. And then it's my pleasure to introduce Professor Dr. Chrissy Laspidou, also Vice President of Water Europe. Thank you, Chrissy.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, so the biggest challenge is to make this 10 minutes. All right, so I will start by speaking about the Arsinoe project, which is a project that the title is Climate Resilient Regions through Systemic Solutions and Innovations, a large Green Deal project funded by Horizon 2020, 41 partners, coordinated by the University of Thessaly in Greece, 15 European countries, and we have 9 case studies in Europe, and 15 million euros in budget for 48 months. So the idea here is to talk about adaptation solutions and to promote innovations in order to reach resilience in the regions. Just very quickly to take you through what it is we are focusing. So in Arsinoe, it's the systems innovation approach that we are implementing. So this means we take a really bottom-up approach. So, for example, usually you would have the scientists and the technology providers bringing the solutions from the beginning, at the beginning of the project, promoting specific solutions that they have expertise on. What we do is we put aside 1 million that we don't really we haven't picked the solutions. So we do this through this co-creation and co-design approach. We set up living labs in the case studies, and we would only promote and design solutions in the consortium where all the expertise is there, that the people, that the members of the living labs actually want and approve and are positive towards. So we find that this is the only way to actually design solutions that will have a quick uptake and that will be embraced by the societies. It is always a challenge to bring people around the same table. I mean, we find that this is the critical gap. So the technologies are there, the knowledge is there, but people will not collaborate. So through this process, we are trying to put people around the same table and explain, of course, give them the data about the science, but then speak about the personal optimum and the systemic optimum, which is not always the same. But since we're all part of the societal optimum should be what we are going for. So we're trying to understand behaviors. We record the conflicts because we're not naive. We know that there are conflicts in climate change adaptation solutions. There are interests that are conflicting, and we try to overcome and change behavior through this process. We view the system as a whole. The second approach is the climate innovation window. With that, we are using this what we call the solutions bazaar. So we have a window where all the innovators have introduced their innovations. Not all of them, but a large number of innovators that we have brought in this platform. And now we are bringing them in contact with the problem owners, which are usually not so easy to reach. They are public authorities, they are cities, they are regions. So we use a bit, I usually say it like in the Airbnb analogy, that brings together the tourists with the apartment owners. So in this case, you have this marketplace that supposedly speeds up the innovation by making the people that take part in the living labs actually shop for these innovations in the bazaar. And at the end, we deliver these climate change adaptation solutions in packages. So it's not just one piece, one innovation, but they're all parts of a puzzle that consists a package that will increase resilience in our case studies. So we have 9 case studies of different scales. So first one, greening the Athens metropolitan area, which is more focused on the city. There is a Mediterranean ports that includes Cyprus, Limassol, includes the port of Piraeus and the port of Valencia, trying to identify what are the vulnerabilities of ports in the Mediterranean. The Main River in Germany, facing the challenges of energy, of food, of water, a Nexus case. The transboundary Ohrid-Prespa lakes, a complex system of lakes touching 3 countries, North Macedonia, Albania, and Greece, and trying to identify the protection of the water. As I said, politically complex as well. Canary Islands, which is a different set of problems, the insularity, the volcano that is there, the pristine ecosystems. The Black Sea with 3, Romania, Turkey, and Bulgaria, focusing on from source to sea, how activities and land use affect the sea, the Black Sea. Southern Denmark, focusing on flooding in the region, and a bit a sister case study with the Torbay and Devon County in the UK, focusing on tourism, on cultural activities, and flooding. And then Sardinia, the pasta case study with the durum wheat, the cheese, how they are affected by climate change and what can we do over there. We come up with seeds that are more resistant to drought that we will be facing. Okay, just very, very quickly, I want to say, I mean, in Athens, so in each case, we're focusing on a climate hazard in each case study, and we are creating a knowledge graph that actually links in a very systematic way the climate hazards with the impacts, with the stakeholders, with the whole ecosystem of actors. So we have in Athens, we focus on heat, extreme heat, which is really, we work together with the Ernst Rockefeller Foundation in Washington, D.C., raising awareness on heat that is one of the climate hazards that really causes morbidity and mortality at a large scale. And we develop innovations that are social innovations, really raising awareness, identifying vulnerabilities, trying to help people to mobilize the city and the services for these people in terms of age of the building, electricity access, and all these things, and identifying the hotspots. And then we have, for example, this app that identifies routes, cool routes, not how to get from point A to point B on days of extreme heat that are cooler for the citizen and for the elderly and the vulnerable. Another one is the sustain graph. This is I told you that we are working on a knowledge graph that with it virtually opens up like a puzzle and shows you the interlinkages of the different systems and quantifies, and the knowledge is all there linked with large databases. And we also do virtual reality experiments to change the behavior and see how people, when they view the new reality, how they might change their willingness to pay for this. If they don't see it, they wouldn't know it. And then I want to link with the Nexus. This is another project that we have, a cost action, which is a networking on the water, energy, food Nexus. We are really happy to be linking up with Sustain Food, which is a US-based, funded by NSF, again, network. In the US, they're called AxelNet. In Europe, we call them cost actions. So we are linked up with Sustain Food that focus on water, energy, food in Africa and the US. So we have a lot, all these continents coming together. And we are doing common things. So the goal is to create this community of practice, of international community of practice, of Nexus enthusiasts, bring the Nexus in the, high on the agenda, understand the interlinkages, understand that the resources, one resource use will have cross-sectoral implications in other resources. Again, this is a lot of a governance issue, and I understand there will be more talked about on the technology side. But Nexus is about governance, it's about systems, and it's about understanding that resources are shared and independent. Thus, if you need collective decision making, if you want to make good decisions, the governance is complex because the institutions are interdependent. But if I see in Greece, for example, I'm finishing. in Greece, for example, we know that the ministries don't talk to each other at all, and even further, they compete with each other. So this, I could imagine a Nexus Ministry of Water, Energy, and Food coming together for really handling resources in an integrated manner. So resource degradation relates to political and social change. So the solutions have to be found at multiple scales, from international to local. If you put trade, it is a really complex system that we need to recognize. And I want to speak, I finish with this, symbiosis. So it is all about putting the stakeholders together. We speak about technology readiness, business readiness, ecology readiness. We are easy to talk about that. But what about the symbiotic readiness, which is about creating strong interlinkages? And then the next project that we got is Bionics with Biodiversity Center in collaboration with IPBES, another very good, very important work there with the Nexus assessment. And I will stop here, and hopefully we can have some discussion afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Chrissy. Very impressive overview. And I can confirm that especially the Arsinoe project is a very interesting project to be engaged in.
It is.
Yes. Okay. With that, we will, I pass the word to Per. Per, you want to please introduce the panel?
Yes, thank you so much. And I just short comments of Chris's presentation. I will say that the governance issue is extremely important. I would say that the Swedish government, the new government that came in place in last year, did a really good understanding of the importance of collaborating and understanding that we need to not speak in silos anymore. So therefore, the State Secretary, you are responsible for both for the climate and the industry. You're on the same department. So it means that we combine climate issues within the industry perspective. I think that is something that more governance would need to look on going forward. I will just briefly introduce what we are doing in our company. And before then I hand over to the panel to just shortly describe each of them, what they are, their top project at the moment. We are a recycler. We were a transport company in 1881 when we transported goods and people with horses. Back then, we also brought latrines back from the inner city of Stockholm to the surroundings. So giving, in this case, nutrients back to the farmlands. Today, we are now transforming into becoming raw material supplier and detoxifier, where we bring back nutrients like phosphorus and potassium and nitrogen, but here on element level. And I think that what's interesting when it comes to the water issue, that we talk a lot about the need of adaptation. But I see that the solutions, if we really understand the potential in the circular dimension, you will both create adaptation and mitigation at the same time. I will give you two examples. In Norway, we have a project where we will recirculate, or we have already started that one for a couple of years ago, to be honest. We are collecting fish poo or fish sludge in the fjords of Norway, and we transport them today to Denmark. So we have 4 boats already going back and forth between Norway and Denmark, because the first step is that we're producing biogas. And the amount of fish sludge or fish poo that the Norwegian fish farms are emitting each year, if we can collect them instead, we can then produce energy for 600,000 Swedish households. There's a huge amount of energy. But then the second one that is also very important is that we can produce huge amount of nitrogen fertilizer and also phosphorus. So the amount of phosphorus that we today are looking out in the Norwegian fjords are 16,000 tons, and Sweden each year imports 11,000 tons. So we can supply a whole country with phosphorus in the size of Sweden anyhow. The second one I would like to talk about is I was given the honor to do a keynote presentation where the World Customs Organization had their first symposium last October about how custom in the world can support a more sustainable development. And the first symposium was about the food industry. My take was, of course, about circularity. And we demonstrated how today's wastewater treatment plants should be tomorrow's resource plants, producing nitrogen and phosphorus. And the headline of my presentation was that not only rich people should be able to buy eggs in the future, because the challenge we see now is that the costs of nitrogen and phosphorus are booming. And of course, not every farmer can afford. And of course, it will be that in rich countries, we will need to pay more for the food, but in the rest of the world, they will not have food. So these are the challenges. I can go on forever, but I say that I would like also to mention that The Guardian last week had an article, and the headline was about a phosphorus get-on. And so the problem is that the warmer climate we now have will also lead to more eutrophication, and that will, of course, kill the possibility to then, in the long end, produce food in our waters. And I came here to US and I put on the TV channel and I saw that now we have algae blooms out in the Atlantic. And the result is that you have huge amount of algae rotting and coming into the shores of Florida. So the problem is getting worse. And so the phosphorus situation where we thought we had it under control is not under control. But I believe that the water sector can, in this case, be a source of solutions instead. By that, I would like to now introduce the panel, and we will do a first introduction to each and every one. So Antonio Lorenzo, you are the CEO of Biothon from Spain, but you're also the coordinator for the Bionics project. So please, your 3 minutes about what you're doing.
Wow. 3 minutes. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. So yeah, let me introduce Bioazul first. So we are a water engineering and consultancy SME located in the south of Spain, in Malaga. Very active in research and innovation activities, and we develop, let's say, eco-innovative solutions for the sustainable water management, especially what has to do with treatment, water reuse, and recovery of resources, very much in line also with this circular economy principle. So we are a 12 people team, 12 professionals, 7 women and 5 men, committed to the environment, committed to the sustainability, and motivated by contributing with our work to the resolution of the societal challenges. What we offer are tailor-made solutions for our clients with regards to water treatment, any kind of water, industrial wastewater, urban wastewater, processed water, and we promote the water reuse whenever it's possible. Water reuse at city level, so for urban uses, promoting also this tandem blue and green infrastructure with, for example, vertical gardens, but also reuse in industry and also in agriculture, especially in agriculture. So we try to close not only the water loop, but also the nutrients loop, and deliver a nutrient-rich, reclaimed water to be used in agriculture. With regards to Bionics project, the Bionics project is Prima Foundation funded project. Prima is a partnership for research and innovation in the Mediterranean area. So we have a project that started last year in May. It will run for 3 years. It's a 4 million project, and we have 16 partners. And the partners are coming from European Mediterranean countries, but also non-European Mediterranean countries, such as Morocco, Tunisia, Jordan, and Lebanon. And from Europe, we have Spain, Portugal, Germany, and Italy. So the main aim of the project is to provide these practical and adaptive tools. We were also talking about this, examine concrete and context adaptive innovations for specific territories, enhance policy and governance, and facilitate the WEF and Nexus practical implementation, balancing ecological, economic, societal aspects. So WEF stands for Water, Energy, Food, and Ecosystems, and we have a new constellation there, and we have 7 demonstration projects in these countries I was mentioned, with, let's say, 6 innovative approaches: solar irrigation, solar desalination, agrovoltaics, water distribution in agriculture, in the case of Italy, nature-based solutions. And in Spain and in Tunisia, we have water reuse. And this is also in Spain, the demo project we are leading from Biodiversity side. And this is based also on other previous and running projects in which we try, as I said before, to deliver this nutrient-rich reclaimed water. So we try not to eliminate phosphorus, not to eliminate potassium, so the macronutrients stay there, the nitrogen is turned into nitrates, and fertirrigate crops. And this is how we contribute. I don't know if I have done it in 3 minutes or not, but thank you so much.
You're very good in timing. One question, what are your biggest challenges when it comes to implementing your solutions?
In terms of water reuse, I mean, there are different challenges. First of all, is the acceptance from the farmers and also the consumer. Sometimes they are not very, I mean, and they think is water coming from wastewater is not safe enough or whatever. So we always try to monitor the water quality, always following for sure the legal framework, and show that the water is totally safe to be used and it will not cause any public problem of health. Another challenge was also the legal framework itself. So in Spain, we have a royal decree from 2007 in terms of water reuse for different purposes. But now the news, because we couldn't go to other countries with our technologies because the legal frameworks were different. The good news is that we have the new regulation of minimal requirements for the use of reclaimed water in agriculture, which is now a regulation from the European Commission and will enter into force in June this year. So we will have the same legal framework that will support us to enter in in the market outside Europe. And other challenges, I mean, always water reuse, if we think about circularity and reuse, is something, let's say, that needs to be monitored. And you have to do analysis at every week or 2 weeks, and also for different kind of parameters. And this is quite costly for the end users, for the clients. So this may be a challenge that we have to work on that in the future, and to do more online monitoring without taking all the samples to the lab and then pay a lot. Yeah, I would say that.
Good, thank you. Now we turn over to Austin Alexandria. You're the Vice President for Sustainability and Social Impact at Xylem.
Thank you for having me. This is such a wonderful session here at UN Water Week. This morning we just rang the New York Stock Exchange bell, and so I'm still kind of coming down from adrenaline from that. It was really fun. So, like you said, I lead sustainability and social impact at Xylem. We are a water technology company with about 17,000 employees, and we provide technology and solutions to the water sector in 150 countries. I'm particularly, as I think about sustainability and impact, both of our own operations, our own supply chain, but also that of our products, and how we can best support customers to do three things. First, decarbonize the water sector, as this group is probably well educated. Water, wastewater utilities make up about 2 to 2.5% of global greenhouse gas emissions. That is not something that can be ignored. And water use and management make up to 10%. Water's heavy, takes a lot of energy to move. So decarbonizing the water sector, building infrastructure and technology that is resilient to climate change, as has been said many times over here, and doing it in a way that is equitable. We have two issues. First, in the developing regions where so many still don't have access to water and sanitation, and also in developed markets in the US and in areas in Europe where water bill can be very burdensome for low-income families. So how the CapEx numbers that are being thrown out for water infrastructure investment are frankly not going to happen. The numbers that are being thrown out here in the US, we're just not going to get that. But the technology exists to make those changes in much more affordable ways. So how can we use things like digital, innovative technologies to move faster? Today, I'm change gears slightly. One thing, we're excited to be at this event, but at UN Water Week overall, is Xylem. We see our role here at UN Water Week to help drive private sector to lead the way. The innovation is needed to solve the challenges that are being discussed this week. And we hope to bring together all of our private sector partners from across the water sector and beyond to drive innovation. So later today, we'll be announcing just over $11 billion from about 17 private sector players, companies and venture capital over the next 5 years to drive innovation in the water sector so we can solve these challenges with technology that is done in the most innovative and appropriate way. So, thanks.
Good. Impressive to listen to that one. I would like to hear more about how it went on the Wall Street. Then of course, we see a challenge from our side that many of the regulations in Europe anyway are based on you're allowed to use it based on origin and not on quality. Do you see the same problem by yourself when it comes to legislation?
Yes, I think I'm not in the regulatory space, so I'll do my best to not fumble too much. Yeah, I mean, what is done in the private sector and what innovations we bring to the table are driven by the regulatory environment, particularly in the water and wastewater utility sector, because that is their ultimate answer. And so it is important for regulators to think about as they're creating legislation or policy, what that downstream impact is, because the private sector will answer with the technology to solve for the regulation. because it is what drives our customers. And so considering that long-term implication when developing regulation, we think is incredibly important. I'm not sure I answered your question, but
Yeah,
okay.
definitely, I think. We now turn over to you, Cyril Courrier. You are the CEO International at Suez. Your 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me. Just a few words on Suez. We were created with the construction of the Suez Canal 160 years ago, and we had our first water concession in Cannes, France in 1879, meaning that the water issues were already existing on the 19th century. We have been ever since working on many fields around water and waste management, specifically on the construction, operation, financing of water, wastewater, and desalination assets. Two words on what we believe it's important. It's how to optimize the investments on the whole cycle of water cycle, meaning first, the best investment is the one you don't need to do, meaning that the optimization of the network performance is becoming more and more important on the this is on the one side, and on the other side, we have considered so far the wastewater as being a waste, meaning that it should be given back to the nature with hopefully a quality that will not impact too much the nature. And I believe that we should change this position and consider it as a resource. You just mentioned it for phosphorus, but I'm also talking about water, and the reuse of water should become something very critical for the future. And it's very clear that the countries that are facing water scarcity have started this reuse mindset way ago. And you were talking about Spain, but it's also the case in the Middle East, obviously, but also in the northern countries of Africa, where, for example, we are operating the main wastewater treatment plant of Egypt in Cairo, or Gabal El Asfar, and transferring the treated water to the agriculture because the Nile is it's booked, I would say, for personal and people use. So this is something that we need to change. And you were talking about the legislation. I believe that we need to move forward very quickly in most of the developed countries regarding this legislation. The principle under which we should take absolutely no risk because of what could be in the wastewater is no longer valid. We do have all the companies that are around, the technologies to be able to solve those issues. So I believe it is very important to move towards that direction. And within what is developed by the European Union regarding the urban wastewater treatment directive, I do believe that a strong focus on reuse should be included. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I have a follow-up question. What financial tools can be implemented, you believe, when it comes to enabling both industrial and public actors to be more water smart?
As I was saying, we need to implement the investment that would reduce the need of fresh water. And the need of fresh water can be reduced by optimizing what are the existing assets. And when I look at my country, France, we need an investment on the networks of around 15 billion euro over the next years in order to be able to cope with what would be a reasonable performance network, which is huge. And I believe that the European community should work towards that direction, and by implementing, for example, the creation of a water fund that would be able to solve part of those issues. So this is something that we believe it's very important. And in the developing countries, because I don't want to focus too much on the developing countries, we know that the international financing institution have been working a lot in order to develop, but those investments have been made mainly on the main cities of those countries, and secondly, they are not considering the operation and maintenance. And at the end of the day, the huge investment that is made is going to be somehow lost or less effective because the operation and maintenance is not done on the appropriate way. So I really advocate on the fact of giving the possibility of financing a couple of years or 3 to 5 years of operation and maintenance so that we can train, help local engineers to be able to drive their assets on the long-term basis.
Good, thank you so much. Now we return to Jack Levin. You're the Chief Climate Officer at U.S. International Development Finance Corporation. So what does this corporation do?
Thanks, Par, and thanks to the panel. I appreciate the chance to learn more about what you're working on, and particularly what you need us to do differently in the way of finance. So DFC, and I can see your clock, Par. It's very intimidating to be sitting right next to Par because he has the clock running. But I will be compliant. So we are the U.S. Development Bank. We are a new agency by statute. We were created just a few years ago, although we inherited two predecessor agencies, two pre-existing agencies with whom many of you probably have worked around this table, the Overseas Private Investment Corporation, which had a long history of doing desal and water conveyance projects, particularly in the Middle East. For example, OPIC provided $200 million to the DC project in Jordan, to a similar desal project in Algeria. That has been the basis for which DFC is now building an effort to continue on both expansions of those and new projects in the way of Middle East developing economy water infrastructure projects. The other agency that merged with OPIC into DFC was the Development Credit Authority at USAID. And the mandate that we got from Congress was really new. And I want to underscore a few things here because I think it's important for you all to understand exactly what we're designed to do. Number one, we have a mandate to do development finance, meaning to work in the poorest parts of the world in the most challenging environments and advance economic development. Number two, we have sort of a dual mandate to advance the U.S. strategic interest. And in a world where there are now plenty of alternatives for financing from strategic competitors of the US and Europe, this is an increasingly important role to step in and say, we are going to provide a different model, one that requires standards and sustainability and a long-term outlook to ensure that projects can continue to operate and operate successfully. In the OPIC days, we were restricted to working with US companies. In the DFC days, we no longer have that restriction. So we are eagerly communicating with many of you here, particularly recognizing the leadership that European companies have played in this space to finance your projects. The other exciting thing about DFC that's new is, in addition to continuing our work on the debt and insurance side, we're now able to offer products in equity and in technical assistance. And the light bulb went off a little bit around your comment on O&M and sort of innovative gap filling that can be done with something like a technical assistance product. We have a tremendous amount of flexibility to deploy that product creatively, to bring it to bear against idiosyncratic and bespoke issues that come up in various industries. And we want to work together with you to scope that out and to think about how that can work. The last thing that I want to say is we we're very active in this space. It may not be common knowledge, but thinking about network performance, last year we did a deal in Rio where we worked with the municipality through a tender on a wastewater treatment facility project that will not only sort of harden the infrastructure against flood impacts, but also provides digital sensing efficiencies and sort of integrates the operations of the wastewater plant into the resilience model for the city. We just today are announcing a major investment in the Global Water Equity Fund, $100 million for that fund in partnership with the Water Resilience Coalition, which is a group of businesses. Some of you are here, Ecolab, Starbucks, DuPont, Ricketts, I'm sure I'll miss some. But we love this fund because our mission is really to provide tools that can de-risk private investments, that can enable us to catalyze other financiers, other folks in the private sector who would otherwise not go into a deal. And this fund in particular illustrates that, because I think it's safe to say that without the DFC contribution, that fund wouldn't have happened. Tomorrow, we're going to announce another fund focused on sub-Saharan Africa, and is going to reach 30 million people for access to water. And our ambition is high. Last year we did a total of more than around $2.3 billion in climate finance. That was part of a agency-wide total of $7.4 billion. And we have, for all intents and purposes, an unlimited headroom to do more. Our only limitations are the availability of projects that we are aware of, and platforms to participate in, and the human resources that we have to actually execute. So another sort of plug here is we're hiring. And if you all know people who are interested in and who have a skill set in this area, who would like to work in the US government advancing this important mission, please tell me, because I would like to meet them. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's a new way of recruiting people. I appreciate that. We were running out of time, but I have a last question for you, and I would like you to reflect on what you have heard today. Are there anything that you will believe could be a leapfrog strategy in a developing country, or anything that is not possible to implement? I know I was a former member of WaterAid, and then I visited Rwanda, and they were really, really glad about their new water treatment facility plants. Of course, they did not have a wastewater treatment plants, and it's very few wastewater treatment plants in Africa at all. So the question, of course, do you believe that what you heard today is possible to also convert to other parts of the world?
I do, but I want to mention, I guess, one thing on the regulatory conversation, because I think that this is something that DFC doesn't do. We don't really take on regulatory matters, but we have sister agencies across the U.S. government, from USAID to the State Department to the Department of Energy, for example, that's very involved in bilateral and multilateral advising and consulting on regulatory frameworks. And I think that one of the things that we find to be a challenge, because I would like to be able to say it's all possible, but I think that probably the more sober view is that oftentimes we face threshold level sort of enabling environment challenges in our markets, which are directly tied to a lack of capacity and a lack of implementing of regulations that for us, for people who are working in markets from Western Europe to California to the eastern part of the United States, you take it for granted. But the idea of, for example, incentivizing conservation so that business models don't rely on a volumetric sales basis to give businesses a model to actually invest in these types of efficiencies, that's the type of thing that we don't see in so many of these markets. So I think, but for some very sort of fundamental regulatory challenges, I think the sky is the limit. And again, we would like to be an advocate for you all with the governments with whom we work and partner. And so if there are issues that you're running into that we can be a helpful conduit for communicating, please don't be shy.
Rick, that's a nice word for private companies to hear. We will definitely listen to you. By that, I have a long list of questions that I intended to ask, but sorry, I will not do that. So I will hand over to you now, Dirk, to give the closing remarks.
Okay, thank you very much. So in the opening, I think I refer to our concept for a water-smart society. And today we've been discussing about the drivers for the deployment of circular processes. I think we heard a lot that legislation here is very important, but also finance in a European context. Also, the State Secretary referred to a very important ongoing process, which is the revision of the European Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive, which I think is really a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to bring about, I would say, an innovative drive in how we deal with that in a European context, because the former version was developed 31 years ago. I think that's an important indication that we shouldn't miss that opportunity. We, from our side of Water Europe, we've been actively promoting what we would call an energy neutral or even energy positive circular wastewater directive. And I think what we've seen, everything is going in the right direction in that sense. So we're very happy there. I think we've also seen that during the discussion, we saw a lot of elements which actually referred to the vision and our model for a water smart society, as I introduced it in the beginning, especially concepts around circular water, which is all about capturing and exploiting the value in water, multiple waters, which is about, I would say, increasing reuse and recycling of water, but also alternative water sources, and of course, resilient water. So making sure that we help to make our societies become climate change proof. So with that, I'd like to thank all the speakers. Yeah, Per as moderator, of course, again, the European Union for the willingness to host us, and of course you all for registering for this event and being present. So thank you all. You may have seen we have some drinks and some food available also there. So please don't immediately run away, and enjoy and keep on networking. Yeah, thank you very much.
All right. Yeah.
I think my colleagues work better than my own.
What?